GCU did more than reach their goal this season. They climbed the mountain and won the national championship after upsetting the two-time defending champions, Lindenwood University.
The world's national champions!
An accomplishment a Western Conference team hasn't done since 2011.
What's up, Rink Rats? It's Woody. I'm here to tell you that this week's episode is brought to you by Champion Hockey. If you're looking for quality wheels, sticks, bags, and apparel, then look no further. Champion Hockey has everything you need to look and play like a champion. Check out top-of-the-line Legacy Series sticks and wheels and upgrade your game without breaking the bank. Go to champion.hockey to purchase your gear now, and make sure to check out Champion on Instagram at Champion Hockey to stay updated with products and events. Champion Hockey. Look like a champion. Hey, did you know we're also on Spotify? You can listen to No Offsides on Spotify while you're busting out reps in the gym, driving to your next tournament, mowing the lawn to gain brownie points with your wife because you're always gone at tournaments, or while you're getting in some much needed shooting and stick handling practice. So if you're into multitasking, make sure to follow us on Spotify, where you can listen to all of our awesome content on the Spotify app.
No offside.
Welcome to No Offsides Podcast. I'm Dan Deed here with my partner Justin Wood.
What's up?
Today's guest is someone that college roller world should always remember. He was part of what some call the miracle on tile. He scored the game-winning goal against Lindenwood to win the D1 National Championship for GCU. Please welcome Dylan Guy. How's it going, man?
What's going on, fellas? Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I had a good intro last week, and I thought I could top it. I'm not sure if I did, but you know what? I hope I did you well.
I'll take it. No complaints here.
So, Dylan, you have an interesting story, right? So you played for GCU. Did you play just last year, or did you play the year?
So I just played last year.
Okay.
The year before that, I actually spent starting my own program, which is UTC.
Okay.
So the year before last was their inaugural season. They had a program for all of 4 games back in the 2015-2016 season. And they just didn't go through the right process and got shut down by the school. So, but 2 years ago was their inaugural first full season.
Okay. So you start up UT Chattanooga. What made you go from Chattanooga for 1 year and then go to GCU?
Man, it's kind of a wild loop. So out of high school, I quit playing hockey for a whole entire 2 years. I was burnt out. I had an ice hockey coach that just kind of wore me out. He was super just hardcore, didn't necessarily care about anything but getting his paycheck, and it kind of ruined it for me. And I was burnt out, and I went to college and said, you know what, it's time to give hockey a rest. I did the whole college fraternity thing for a year or two, and just kind of got tired of that, and was like, you know what, I had a buddy from home that was playing in a men's league in Chattanooga, and he finally convinced me to play. I played in that the end of my sophomore year of college, and when my junior year rolled around, we had kind of like that summer gotten a group of guys together from the university that played, and a couple of guys that had graduated. And we played a few tournaments that summer, and I was like, you know what, this is cool. Rich Call, who anybody that's played in Atlanta, he was the shorter Asian ref. He's reffed me since I was probably 8 years old. And if you've played in Snellville, Georgia, he has reffed one of your games.
Oh,
Definitely.
We were at a tournament. We were wearing our Chattanooga Beer League jerseys, and he came up to me, and he recognized me. My last name's pretty unforgettable. And so me and Rich go way back, and he was like, hey, man, he's like, why don't you guys have a school team? And I was like, what are you talking about? Outside of kind of Bethel, I grew up in Nashville, so Bethel had been preached to me since I was younger. And so he was like, man, y'all should start a D3 team. I didn't even know D3 college roller was a thing. I just kind of thought it was the Lindenwood Bethel realm. Like outside of that, like nobody in Nashville really knew what college roller was. So when that started, I was like, you know what, I'll see what I can do. And the next year we ended up having a team. We weren't great. I think we won like 4 games out of the 15. And so it was a brutal first year. And then I got a call from Aiden Sweats, to propose some rule changes about he was trying to make the league 3-on-3 and he wanted to change some of the penalty rules, just trying some different things to grow the game. And to be honest, I was actually the only one out of everyone he called in the league that didn't agree with his rules. And so we spent about an hour on a Zoom call. And at the end of the Zoom call, we were just kind of sitting there bullshitting. And he hit me with the, hey, I kind of watched some of your games and I've watched you play at some tournaments and you've got some pretty impressive stats down there in the SEC. Why don't you come out and check out Lopes Roller? And this was about a month before Nationals. And I'd never been to Arizona. So I bought a plane ticket and I went and stayed in the team house for 3 or 4 days. I skated with the team a couple times. And I had zero intention of actually playing. I was like, you know what? It's a trip to a new school in a state I've never been to. The school paid for everything for me to come out there. So I was like, you know what? Why not?
Okay.
Very cool.
So they reimbursed me for my flight and everything. I went out there, and the last day I was there, I called my parents and I was like, you know, I kind of thought it was a shot in the dark. I kind of thought they would be like, this is stupid. You need to graduate and grow up. But I was like, you know, Mom, Dad, I'm really not opposed to giving this a try. And they kind of surprised me and were like, you know what, do it. And, you know, next thing I know, that was in April. July 1st, Aiden convinced me to move down there early. Me and him spent basically 2 months training together, just me and him. Roller in Arizona is significantly just like above anything else probably than other than California, in my opinion. The local rink we played in literally had a pro league on Sundays that was invitation only.
Wow.
Dang.
They quite literally, like, if you didn't get asked to play in it, there was no, hey, I want to play. And they're like, it was invitation. You either were asked to play or you weren't playing.
Okay.
And it was competitive enough that not even our whole D1 team was in it the year I was there. So I would say you could probably pull the top guys from each team and have a decent pro team at NCRHA or State Wars or anything. So, like, and that was just from our home rink. So the level of roller out there is just crazy. But I basically spent 2 months training with Sweats, and he kind of gave me a new outlook on roller I'd never seen. And I grew up playing ice around Nashville, and I started as a roller guy, so I hadn't really had any great coaching. I'd had a handful of decent ice hockey coaches, but I'd never really had someone to teach me the proper way to play roller. And spending those 2 months in Arizona training and just playing tournaments out west, I think it really helped my game. And it definitely, I'll say the player I was when I moved there in July was not the player I was when I left in May. So it was kind of cool to see how much I improved in a year. And I think a lot of the people from home were kind of impressed with how much I improved too. And there were definitely some people that came back and was like, holy God, you're not the same person anymore. So it was kind of cool to see that transformation. And dude, GCU is an awesome experience. I had some family have some health issues. My dad and mom weren't doing too well. That's actually the only reason I didn't go back for my last year of school. But, you know, everything happens for a reason. And we've been pretty successful this year with UTC. And I've kind of got some younger guys coming in that kind of grew up watching me play. So it's kind of cool to hand things off to them and get them stable so that they've got somewhere to enjoy playing roller for the next 4 or 5 years.
All right, and if you love this show, then you will also love the College Roller Foundation. The College Roller Foundation is a volunteer-run, tax-exempt 501c3 nonprofit organization that exists solely to raise and distribute funds to deserving college roller hockey student athletes in the form of scholarships. The College Roller Foundation isn't a tournament series, league, championship, governing body, or sanctioning agency, but rather works with partners to host events to raise and distribute all those dollar bills to roller players who also like to get their academia on. By raising money through donations and divvying out these scholarships to the players, the College Roller Foundation seeks to grow the game of roller in college. And if you're interested in finding more info, helping out, or donating, please visit www.collegerollerfoundation.com and make sure to follow them on Instagram at College Roller Foundation. College Roller Foundation, growing the roller game one scholarship at a time. It's time to join a revolution in roller with US Roller Cup, a premier roller hockey tournament series. The US Roller Cup is led by a passion for the sport. US Roller Cup is driven to create an unparalleled experience for players, fans, and coaches alike. With a focus on promoting roller hockey at all levels from youth to professional, we are committed to growing the game and fostering a sense of community within the roller hockey world. To find out more information, find tournaments near you, or to sign up for an upcoming tournament, go to www.usrollercup.com and be sure to follow USRC on Instagram at US Roller Cup. US Roller Cup, a revolution in roller.
Yeah, man, that sounds awesome. I like how you said that you feel like you came back a different guy, or other people were telling you came back a different guy. And you also said you never felt like you really had solid coaching. Do you feel like Aiden's a pretty solid coach in that regards?
Me and Aiden definitely butt heads on a lot of things. We were roommates when I lived in Arizona. He's definitely not the easiest guy to see eye to eyes with, but the dude, he lives for roller hockey, man. I don't know any other way to put it. If his way didn't work for teaching me things, he found a way to make it work for me, and that was his thing. As much as you want to get better, he was willing to do it. And I think that's a lot of what roller is. You get out of it what you put into it. So there's some guys that went to Lindenwood and Bethel, and they just kind of went through the motions, and they just played to play, and they weren't there to improve or step up, and those are not the guys that Aiden recruited when he started GCU. And you can ask anybody that's played with me, or I'm not the best skilled guy. I don't have the hardest shot, but I promise I'm going to be the hardest worker, and I'm going to do everything I can to get better every time. I'm definitely not. I don't have the best hands on the rink. Whenever I step on the rink, that's never a question. But I think that's why we were so successful last year with GCU. A lot of us, we just all wanted to get better. And in that Lindenwood game, anybody that watched it, we were not the better team, but I would say we were the harder working team for sure, without a doubt.
That's huge.
That's one of those games we could probably play 10 times and they'd probably beat us 8. But that was not a game I think we ever intended to lose.
Okay.
That's an awesome mindset.
Now, I'm curious because you're talking about training with Schwetz, right? And so, what does that look like 2 months before the season? Is it like super strict there? He's like, you're going to eat a certain way, or is it just kind of like, this is how we're going to work out. We're going to skate X amount of times a week.
So he might actually kill me for telling y'all some of this, but he'll get over it. So, man, I had never been in a position where I had any I had the bare minimum off ice training, and I'd never been on a team where I had any kind of nutrition coach, any kind of hardcore off ice training or anything. So when I moved to Arizona, it was a state record. The first 21 days I was there, it never dropped below 120 degrees day or night.
Oof.
When I tell you, you opened the front door and it felt like you were opening an oven, that is literally what it felt like.
Oh, yeah.
So the first 2 days I was there, we kind of hung out. We had a good time. And that third day, he was like, "It's time to go to work." He's like, "We're getting up at 5 and we're going to the gym." And I was like, "Dude, neither one of us had jobs at the time. Like, I had just moved there, and I was like, we're not getting up at 5 o'clock." And the first day he came in there, and he woke me up in some unpleasant ways, and I was like, okay, this guy is not kidding. So after that first day, when I didn't wake up at him hollering at me, he had a new approach. We had a couple of those Google Homes or whatever they're called, and he set them to play trumpets at 5 o'clock in the morning, full blast. And that's how I woke up every morning for basically the next month. And I'm not going to lie to you, we slacked off some days, but we were pretty solid. We'd get up and we'd shoot 100 pucks on the on-campus rink every morning. And he had like 3 or 4 shooting drills we would do. And then we'd go from shooting 100 pucks to we would go work out in one of the on-campus gyms for an hour and a half. And then we would go run for an hour and a half doing sprints and different things.
Wow.
But that was pretty much our routine for a solid month before school started. And then once school started, we practiced 2 days a week as a team. And then I would say probably 80% of the team played in men's leagues at least 1 day a week, if not 2. And then I'd say probably another day a week we skated on campus, just playing 3-on-3 or doing shooting drills. And another cool thing is the ice hockey program at GCU is pretty large. They have not only 3 D1 or 3 ACHA teams, they also have a women's team. So it was pretty common at 6, 7 o'clock at night when the sun would go down, there'd be some kind of pickup between all the ice guys and roller guys playing on campus.
Oh, very cool.
So that was super cool. for basically 8 months, all I did was roller hockey. And
That's awesome. We
it
definitely
was definitely a cool experience. And for anybody that's 18, 19 that enjoys playing roller, I definitely think it's an awesome route. Sweats is doing a great job. And he's going to make it better every year. The first year, they didn't do some things the orthodox way. Last year, there was definitely some improvements. But this year, just from talking to some of my buddies from last year and watching what they're doing online, it's impressive what he's accomplished in 3 years with little to no funding until this year.
Nice.
Yeah, and you must have learned a lot because you're taking it and using it in your own realm, huh?
Man, I work full time. I definitely don't do what Sweats does, and there's a couple other guys on the UTC team that help me out for sure. But that's my goal. I want to leave. I never had that opportunity going into college for that. So like I want to leave the opportunity for the younger guys that kind of looked up to me, like I looked up to some of the guys that went to Bethel and Lindenwood. So that's really my goal, and I kind of have a slight vendetta. I scored the goal to send the game to overtime against Bethel in the semis, and it was kind of a monumental moment. I don't know. I'm sure you guys know Chris Treft with Tidal Wave, but he was announcing all the D1 games at nationals, and he knew a lot about me. I'd worked with Chris in the past with Red Rockets, which is my club program I run, and he had helped us out at UTC as well before we switched over to LaBeta stuff. But he knew a lot of past about me, and he gave some cool insight. But when I scored that goal against Bethel, I was actually the only kid out of all my like travel teams growing up that Potts didn't invite out to Bethel.
No.
So it was kind of a nice. I may have gave Potts a slight gesture when I skated by after I scored that goal. Nothing too crazy, but it felt good. I'm not gonna lie. And what a lot of people don't know is the whole team 3 weeks before nationals, we all went out to Nashville and stayed with my parents, and we played a 3-game series against Bethel in Hendersonville.
Yeah.
After conference championships to get ready for nationals, and they handed our ass to us all 3 games, and it was not pretty. I think the closest game was like 5-1, and then we ended up beating them 7-4 or 7-2 in round robin play, and then overtime of playoffs at nationals. So I think every little step matters in roller. I think every time you play a team, you get better. I think every game you can take something away from it, and I think roller is a lot different from ice. I think any team can win on any given day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, bringing up the what was that? That was the what did they call that matchup? It was
It was the Kelly College Bowl.
Yep, that's what it was. Yes, and so yeah, you go into that right, and all the people that looked at the scores that were posted, and they're like, "Oh shit!" Like that's why it's such an underdog story, is because you lose a 3-set game to Bethel. And then you go on and beat them twice in nationals, and then you end up beating Lindenwood, right? So
yeah,
and I think when Bethel handed it to us there, I think everybody had kind of wrote us off because I think the closest Bethel played Lindenwood that year was like 6-3, and it was the first game of the season. So I think everyone was pretty handedly decided like we were not going to make any noise at nationals. I think everybody was saying, hey, the West Coast is not very good for college roller. I think we were 15-1 in the regular season. So I think everyone was like, hey, that conference is a joke. Look what happened the first time they came out east and played some teams. So I think everyone was a little shocked when our only loss at nationals was to Lindenwood 4-1 in round robin.
Yeah.
definitely.
And even like a lot of it's how you bounce back from games. I think especially at like the way that nationals is ran with round robin play. After losing 4-1 to Lindenwood, I think everybody was like, okay, they've kind of been humbled now. And so we turn around, and Henry Ford had played Lindenwood the morning before we played Lindenwood, and I think it was like 6-1 or 5-1. And we had all kind of said like, okay, we're going to make a statement here. Like this is a game we can get our mojo back. And I think we came out and beat them like 14-0. I think they had like 3 shots on goal. Like we were like, we're going to make a statement here.
That's quite the statement.
But so I think everything is a mindset at nationals.
Sure.
I think anyone can win. Personally, I think GCU is a great team again this year. Aiden's putting in all the work. He's going to give them their best chance to have a shot at winning another championship. So I'm interested to see how it plays out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you look at it and you look at just looking at D1, you look at, there's not many teams people are thinking are going to do well in that division, right? It's usually the same 2 or 3 teams every year. And this is the first year without Bethel?
As far as I know, Bethel's program was 14 or 15 years old, so it's definitely the first time. I think it hurt Lindenwood just as much as it hurt the whole division, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at it. Their only real game all year was in Chicago against GCU, and it was 4-0.
Yeah.
So they went from playing a decent team with Bethel was not a bad team. Lindenwood is just that good.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have full scholarships offered to players to come on and go to school and play hockey, right? So
exactly, and that's the league really needs to fix that. And there's a simple fix to it. If they take Lindenwood's secondary team or third team away, I think it solves a lot of the issues because it pulls a lot of kids out of their program, and they have so much funding because they have so many kids in their program.
Yeah.
And I'm really good buddies with Brett Werscher, who plays on the Lindenwood D1 team. And basically, from my understanding, my talks between me and him, every player in that program, regardless if you're on the D1 team or the black team, you get $1,000. And there's like 4 or 5 kids on the D1 team that are on full rides. So I haven't quite figured out the incentive to go there because I know Lindenwood was, even with the scholarship money, aside from those 4 kids, it's significantly cheaper to go to GCU. GCU is actually super cheap out of state. Fun fact, they don't have in-state, out-of-state tuition.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So,
Did Aiden pay you to keep talking GCU up, or you really just love it that much?
nah, man, I really enjoyed it. If I could have
That's awesome.
went back, I would 100% would have. I thought Aiden was going to convince me to come back after ring ceremony. Me and him had a few chats, and I just couldn't work it out. And he's pretty firm, and once the season starts, not bringing new guys in. So I pride him for that. It's good. He put his foot down. He made some real good rules, and that was the thing that I'd heard about Lindenwood. Those guys, they come in, they have tryouts, and their D1 team's pretty much set in stone what they want. So there's not a lot of room to move up there. If you stay 4 years and you get to that level, you might make the D1 roster. But I just don't think there's any loyalty there. And for my buddies that have played there, I've seen the ones put in times that are good enough, and they just never get the chance. And then I've seen kids come in that they make D1 their first year and never leave, or they play 6 years.
Yeah.
So shout out to my buddy Ether there, putting in probably the most career games played ever in the NCRHA there at Bethel. Still going strong at Henry Ford this year as well.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Schwetzy also said that, another fun fact about GCU is that there are more female students than male students.
Yes, it is 80% female. It is a very convincing stat. I will say that.
Yeah.
And then Arizona is Arizona. It is what it is. And dude, it's a beautiful place to live. The campus is unbelievably nice. There's just a lot of cool stuff to do. Friday nights, there was a bar 15 minutes from our house that did live bull riding.
Ooh.
On Friday nights. It was quite entertaining.
It sounds like
we'd often go there as a team and watch, and it was a good time.
Hell yeah. And
That's
you guys
awesome.
had your own rink right on campus. So that's
So we
sick.
had it was not a miniature rink, but I would say it was not a full-size rink either. It was a smaller rink for sure, but it's an outdoor sport court. If we cleaned it really, really, really good, it was barely playable. So we did the ice roller game on there.
Yep, I was going to try to bring that up.
And that was one of the coolest experiences ever. A couple hundred students come to that. We skate around on campus and pass out tickets. It's a cool deal. And there's a parking garage that runs parallel to the rink, and kids will get up on top and watch from the top of the parking garage. It's a cool experience, and Sweats does a great job promoting it. And and that it was a cool experience for sure. And that rink was a huge advantage for us though, because realistically we could skate whenever we wanted. It might have been 110 degrees, and it might not be the best conditions, but I mean, most of us had an old pair of skates that we left a pair of throwaway wheels on, and we would just go out there and shoot pucks, and it was just another training aspect, man. It was a tool, so you can't complain there.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what you brought from that over to UTC.
So coming to UTC was definitely an adjustment. I think the biggest difference was the kind of give a shit mentality. A lot of guys, if we had 10 guys on the roster, seven guys were 100% bought in at GCU. That's all they cared about. You had guys like me that moved across the country. We had three international players. Bryden Frisk from Canada, Max Courier, the goalie also from Canada, and then Santiago Gonzalez from Colombia. So we had half of our guys were extremely far from home, and they were there for one reason. Then we had a handful, that just walked on, and they still gave a shit. And when it came down to it, they were bought in at the right times. And we, as a team, we did a lot of stuff together. We were super tight knit. I think that's the one thing they don't have this year from last year. But anytime a program grows, you lose that. The more people you bring in, the harder it is to keep that together.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
but I think that's the biggest adjustment from D1 to D3. Roller hockey is obviously pushed off to the side very commonly. You mentioned to someone that doesn't really know roller, and you're like, "Hey, I play roller." They're like, "What is that, ball hockey?" And it's getting better. I think with the college hockey buzz and that kind of stuff, and a lot of these NHL guys like opening up, saying, "Hey, I had a strong roller background," that really helped me. I think it's going to help the sport in the long run. But just kind of getting guys to take it seriously, I think is a big deal. So it's hard, but you have your cool moments too. Like me and Dan, we played in a tournament this past weekend, and in the championship game, after the game, we're standing there talking. Some dude I never know from St. Louis comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, man, you scored the game winner in the national championship, right?" And I was like, "How?" I had on a jersey that didn't have my last name on it. Like, I was like, "How does this guy know?" Yeah. So I think more people watch than people realize. But as far as the game goes beyond the people that play it, I think there's a lot of room for growth. And it's going to take a bunch of sweat, like Aiden Sweats, to make that happen. He can't do it by himself, as much as he likes to think. But Hunter to him, man, I appreciate everything he does for the sport. He definitely made it have an impact on my life. I would have never got to experience any of the things I did without all the hard work Aiden puts in. Going to Brazil and playing for the All-American USA team, that was super cool experience. The whole nationals experience, the NCRHA does a great job with nationals. They handle it amazingly. There's a lot of room improvement on other aspects from them, but as far as national goes, it's a great experience. But I think that's the biggest difference from D1 to D3 that I see. Like, obviously, you're gonna have D1, everyone's solid. Like, you're still gonna have your studs, but your second and third line guys, I would say everyone on our D1 team last year could play Platt pretty hands down. Like, there's no question. You throw them on a Platt team and they're not a liability. I'd say our top 6 guys could have probably all played pro.
That's great.
And out of the 6 guys we played in overtime, I think I was actually the only one that hadn't played pro against Lindenwood. Because Bryden Frisk, Santi Gonzalez, and Max Curie all play pure maple. Aiden's had his hand in a few different pro programs. And I'm Nicholas Edelbrick. He plays a lot with Palma's development team. He's got a pretty good relationship with the guy that runs Palma. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the near future he's playing Palma.
Yeah.
And he had an incredible summer. He really stood out in D1 at NCRHA and State Wars this year. I think he got top scorer at NCRHA. But it just shows you how I don't think people respect how good D1 is now. And obviously those bottom end D1 teams, that's not the case. But I would say last year in your top 2 or 3 teams were that good. And the ones that weren't that good played smart enough that they could compete. I think on paper we were pretty hands down better than Bethel, but Bethel, I mean, they had a rink, an enclosed steel mat rink. They practiced 4 or 5 days a week, and it showed. They played great systems. They had great goaltending, and they played as a unit very well. And I think that goes a long way in roller.
Oh, definitely.
Now, do you think kind of going with NCRHA, like how teams qualify for certain divisions? Do you think there needs to be a different criteria for who goes into what division?
So basically, the way it works, from my understanding, is you at the beginning of the year you sign up for the league, and you apply for the division you want to play in, and the league can deny it. Typically, if you're a first year program, unless you request to play elsewhere, you play D3. Typically, if you win your division, you move up. There are special circumstances, like Ohio State 2 years ago won D2 and graduated half their roster, so they didn't move up. But like last year, Arizona wins D2, they move up to D1, which they were the only other team other than Lindenwood and the Bethel fake games to beat us last year. They would have been a competitor in D1 last year. I think they just wanted to get their first national win in program history. That's the only reason they didn't move up. And then I think you have your schools that are scared to move up, obviously, because of Lindenwood. Like Fullerton last year played us within 2 goals multiple times. They definitely could have beat schools like Rowan and Slippery Rock and Henry Ford. But they know, or they think at least, they don't have a chance to beat Lindenwood. And I think if you make it a situation where there's 10 to 15 D1 teams again, and Lindenwood has to win 4 or 5 playoff games, it changes. Yeah. They're not like somebody can steal a game. Like it's going to happen. It might not happen in the regular season when it doesn't matter, but when it's a win or go home situation, games are different. But I think the league needs to step up and stop letting these teams move down. I think it's a problem, and it's only hurting the league. And we even saw that in our own conference with the SEC this year. Tampa went undefeated. They even they lost 1 game to a Division II school. They went out of conference and played some D2 schools and went 3-1 against D2 schools, and the league didn't make them move up. I don't agree with that. I think if you have a winning record against teams in the division above you, you should probably be playing in that division.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But in the league's argument is they hate to move schools around mid-season. I think in a sport where we have so much turnover, you kind of have to move kids around. Like, it doesn't give you much of a choice.
Yeah.
And so I think they're going to have to adapt to that. And it's also not the situation where pre-COVID they have 100+ teams in the league. It's not the same scenario anymore. And I think it's going to get back to that. We're seeing new teams pop up every year. If you look in the last 3 years, you have GCU, UTC, Marymount, some team from California just joined.
Yeah.
St. Louis just got a new community college.
Yeah.
Shout out to the team in California. They actually won their division or their conference in D3.
Yes.
But you're going to see these new teams popping up, and I think it's going to take a lot of like kids that go somewhere and they're like, hey, we don't have a roller team. Let's start one, and it's not hard. Dealing with the university is the hardest part, in which starting a club sport can be difficult. It comes down to getting broke college kids to spend money, so it's like pulling teeth. But it happens, and a prime example, we had a kid this year that was supposed to come to UTC next year. He decided to go a different route with school. UTC doesn't offer the program, so now he's not coming, and I'm helping him start a team at MTSU, which is Middle Tennessee State University.
Very cool.
And so like it's just going to take people helping people, because like I kind of did it blind, and if I would have known some things, I could have done it differently, and we would have been way better off.
Do you want to share those things just in case?
To be honest, man, the first thing is like our first year, I tried to do everything. I tried to coach. I tried to run things. I tried to play, and it's just too much. And not only does it make whoever's doing that harder to have a good time and play, you miss things. And so it took. Luckily, we had some guys from our local men's league, all of which play on the Scenic City Snipers. Noah Dillingham, Nick King, and Greg Marshall all stepped up and into a coaching role this year. Nick went to every single game we had this year, I think, except for one weekend where he had some family issues. But he even traveled to Texas with us. So I think it was huge of guys like that stepping up and just really kind of like putting the program first when they have nothing invested.
Sure.
And anyone that knows Noah, he's a great guy. He loves the sport, and he's helped us with recruiting, and he knows rollers so well. I think so. If you get a couple guys in your corner that can help you like that, and it takes a couple students stepping up. Like this year, we sat down at the beginning of the year, and I assigned a treasurer, I assigned a travel agent, and a president.
All right.
And between those three guys, every weekend I was calling them and being like, "Hey, do you have your stuff figured out? Do you have your stuff figured out? Do you have your stuff figured out?" And I could focus on just playing and coordinating with Rich if we had questions. And this year we tried to go out of conference a lot to play some different teams. We went to the Midwest and we played Purdue, Maryville, and Illinois State, who we actually just played again at US Roller Cup. And then we went down to Texas and we played Colorado, Boulder, Sam Houston, and LA Tech. So I think when you get more organized, and we need to improve on our fundraising. We have not done a great job with that in the past. We finally were able to get something set up with our school where we're able to have a link, and it kind of like works like GoFundMe, but it's through the school and it's tax deductible. So it's almost better than GoFundMe.
Yeah.
So the school was cool enough to help us get set up with that. And we finally got a link out, and now we have 2 weeks to raise about $3,500 is what it'll cost us. And that's not including any extras, any food, and anything like that. And anyone that's been to college knows it's not easy to do stuff like that on a college student budget.
Yeah.
Most of them only get to work part-time jobs because they're taking classes, and you also have to realize they're taking off a whole week of work to go to this tournament. So it's a lot of these kids are living paycheck to paycheck just to be able to eat. And even at that, a lot of weeks they eat ramen. And I know it sounds harsh, but it's the reality. Some of these kids are really, to put themselves through school, like really struggle. And so I try and keep it affordable as possible. I'm blanking on the US Roller Cup guy's name, but he did a great job of organizing everything and like making it as affordable as possible for those teams. I think this year he struggled a little bit just because of the way things fell and everything that kind of happened with all the hurricanes. I think all the Florida teams were so drug out for money they couldn't come. But I think what he did was a great start. So he's got another one coming up in a few weeks, I think, and I'm interested to see how many teams come to that. And dude, it's a great idea. I think there's some things he's going to have to work on and change. I think his mindset is he wants to do like a scholarship type thing. And I think that's going to be hard to work out with the schools. Like I'm trying to work out that with our school right now.
Sure.
When we won that tournament, we got a $3,000 scholarship fund. And the school doesn't really like us using our money to pay for people's classes. So what I think I'm going to try and end up working out is it kind of goes into our team account. So where we can buy uniforms and jerseys and stuff like that. And I wanted to do something cool for the guys this year. And a lot of them obviously were probably not too happy that I left for GCU and then tried to come back. As far as the UTC program goes, we're another situation that we're pretty blessed. We have a very, even better than GCU, we have a campus that's across the street from our football stadium. It's about 3 minutes from campus. So it's a short drive, and there's a men's league there that's pretty decent size. I think they have 12 teams that play in the men's league. So we have a team in that, and we practice one night a week after the youth group. So it's the opportunity is definitely there, and there's guys like Noah that aren't going anywhere. And I think he had a kid this year, so I think his plate was a little full. But next year, I see him stepping up and helping out a lot more, because he's another one of those guys that just loves roller. He just wants to see the sport grow.
Yeah, what's your guys' rink like that you're playing on all the time for your men's league?
So it's an outdoor sport court. The easiest way I know how to describe it is it's that little checkerboard stuff that if you fall, it like takes off everything. But this year the league was able to raise enough money. They just put glass up, so we haven't. It's not covered, but it is glass now. Up until this past year, it was fencing. But they got new glass, new boards this year, and I think when I got there 3 or 4 years ago to UTC, it was concrete. So they're making progress.
Yeah.
And I think the city's open to helping out, and so that's always huge. But I think as far as growing the college side of things, so you get more schools like UTC. I know that I worked with Colby last year at Wish Cup about trying to get a college division. Didn't pan out. A lot of the college guys are already playing tournament teams, so it's hard to pull those guys back in. But I think doing stuff like that and the US Roller Cup deal, it'll help the sport.
Sure.
And the NCRHA, they're pretty set in their ways. A lot of the guys have been involved for the last 15 years. They don't want to evolve. A lot of them are just don't have a lot of time left, and they don't want to change, which is understandable. That's how a lot of things in life are.
I mean, that's most of the roller world, honestly. So
exactly.
But when you're looking at going to nationals, right? And I mean, you think about D3 is the biggest division and the most teams that end up going to nationals, right?
Correct.
Besides Tampa, I mean, who would you say are like the top teams going for your division?
For our division, I think, dude, to be honest, I think every team went like 2-2 at conference championships besides Tampa. Kennesaw State beat us by a goal. We lost to Florida 5-2, which we beat them 5-2 in the regular season. FGCU beat us 7-5 in the regular season, and we beat them 7-2 or 5-2 at conference championships. I'd say us and Kennesaw are probably the two consistent. The next number twos, I think if we play 10 times, it's probably 5-5. We actually didn't play them at all in the regular season somehow, which we went out of conference a lot, so that's part of it. But I would say in Tampa, nationals is one of those things like a goalie can steal a game. Our goalie played outstanding at US Roller Cup. And honestly, we did not play great on Sunday against ISU, and he won that game for us. And any other day, they probably beat us in that championship game if we play the same way. So I think it depends who shows up on what day. And Tampa, they're a very skilled group, but they're also notorious for choking in big games. But they have a good group, and I think another school that's a pretty high-end favorite, I want to say Rhode Island was pretty good this year. Okay. And we played Boulder with 5 guys in Texas, and they smacked us around pretty good. But I think our full roster, we could hang with those guys. I think so. Boulder's a solid team. I'd say Tampa's pretty solid. Yeshiva won last year, and from my understanding, they didn't lose many. So I'd say they're probably another contender. But D3 is so wishy-washy. I mean, like, you never know who's going to win.
Well, and also, if you look back at scores too, right? You got 29-0. I mean, there's just some really weak divisions with like one solid team in it too.
Exactly.
So, and that's kind of like.
And unless teams travel, it's hard to gauge other teams.
Yeah.
So, like, nobody really goes up to the Northeast to play those teams because the conference directors don't really want them to. They already have so many teams to deal with. And so a lot of times those weekends, they'll only give you 3 games. And we can go to Texas and play 5, or we can go to Columbus and play 5. So it doesn't really make sense on a travel standpoint for us to go to the Northeast. And all those teams, they don't play the same team more than twice all year because I think it's 10 teams in their conference. And we only play a 15-game season, and you can play an extra 5 if you pay for it. So
if you pay for it?
Yeah, so the way the league works is the league pays for 15 games, and then every game after that is $175.
Okay.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so I think D1 technically plays 20, but D2 and D3 is 15. Okay. But you can play the extra games. Like for us this year, we went to Texas, and those were our extra 5. Okay. Well, extra 4. We only played 19 this year. We played 4 in Columbus. Or not Indy. So
is there a benchmark for how many games you have to play to try and qualify for nationals or
so to be eligible to play in conference championships, you have to play 6 as a player.
Okay.
So if the reason it's 6 is because theoretically it's 2 weekends. So if you're in the Northeast, it's 2 3-game weekends. If you're in any of the other conferences, it's a 5-game weekend. You can't play more than 5 games as a team in the NCRHA. That's their rule. I think there's some bend with it. You can play like 3 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, and 1 on Friday. But from my understanding, for the most part, it's a 5-game maximum. So they try and make it so you have to play more than 1 weekend to be eligible.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
And then the way the AA and so you can have a D1, D2, or D3 team, and then if you have a second team, it's in AA. And once you play 6 games on the D1, D2, or D3 team, you're locked. I think goalies are the only exception.
Okay.
But so they have some stuff in order to prevent stuff like that. But then you look at us. If you look at on paper, we went and played Colorado, and I think they beat us 7-2 and 9-2. However, we took 5 guys down there and a goalie. So, and they had 14. And for anybody that doesn't watch college roller, it's not like tournament play. It's I want to say it's either 3 15s or 3 14-minute stop clock. So the games are at least 2, if not 2.5, normal tournament games.
Yeah.
So even 8 is a struggle. I think the ideal number is 10 for college roller, and that's what a lot of the D1 teams run is 10 guys.
I just find it funny that like when you look at stats for like division leaders and a player has like 6 to 8 games and they have like 60 points.
Yeah,
and you look at who they play and you're like, holy crap, they just smoked 2 teams and that guy had 20 points in 2 games.
Exactly, and you got to look at that stuff too, because you have those teams that they play atrocious teams, and that they're just, if you put them in any other conference, they might not have a point per game. But I mean, anybody that's playing in the SEC or up Northeast, if they have 3.5, 4 points a game, they're legit.
Okay.
I think I was at like 3.5 or 4 points a game before we went to Texas, and I think after Texas I was at like 5 points a game. So it plays out, but like the Max Fatiller, or however you say it, from Tampa, he's one that there are kids in D3 that could play D1. Like he's a solid player. He could definitely compete. Trying to think of another. We played a kid on Maryville. I can't remember his name. I want to say it was Danny something, but he was very good too. So you have, just because it's D3, you have guys like me that can play at a higher level.
Sure.
And then you have like Florida. They really don't have a stud guy, but their goalie, I think when we played them at conference championship, we outshot them 42-20, and they beat us. So you definitely have 1 or 2 players that can leave or come in and change a team completely. And so I think that's why the league struggles so much to regulate who's in what division, because one year you could be a D1 team and then you have 5 guys graduate and all of a sudden you're a D3 team. So I wish the way they would do it is you apply to be in a division first semester. You play half your games first semester, and then in December, the league reevaluates everyone.
I like that.
That's the way it needs to be done, but it would take the league really paying attention to games to determine who needs to be in what conference. And I think you definitely have your respected conferences. Like when we went up to Indy and played Purdue, Maryville, and Illinois State, when we left, the coach pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, we'll see you guys at nationals." Like, and that's kind of like when you know, like, okay, we're legit. Yeah. Or like when Sam Houston came and played all the SEC teams in Atlanta, and a team that ended up going, I think, 2-8 against the SEC, beat them 17-3. It was like, okay, this team is not legit. So I think it's very easy with minimal effort to kind of level things out more. And I know that in the meeting last year, at the captain's meeting at nationals, before the national championship game, they sat down and proposed a solution for D1. And I want to say it was Lindenwood actually that proposed it. And it was like, let's have a D1 premier and a D1. And so basically the idea was to play all the round robin, and the top 2 teams, so Lindenwood and the number 2 seed, at nationals would play a best of 3 game series, and that would be the D1 national championship. And then the next series would be D1, so like 2 through 8 or whatever would have a bracket. And that would it would encourage teams to move up to D1, and then it would level itself out again. I think you have your teams trying to sandbag so they can avoid those better teams, like, cause it bottlenecks. Yeah. Realistically, it all starts with Lindenwood, and then you have your teams like Slippery Rock that are good enough to play D1, and they step down because they don't want to play Lindenwood, and then all of a sudden they're bullying all the D2 teams. And then you have your teams like Tampa that don't want to play Slippery Rock, so they stay and bully all the D3 teams. and so it's a chain link problem.
Yeah, it sounds like
but I think it's a solvable issue for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get you moving like you proposing like, hey, you moving these teams based on, especially if they play cross play, but then you're going to get into teams not wanting to play cross play because they don't want to show their cards, right? So,
And
where they,
it's not even that. A lot of the teams can't. Like,
yeah,
if you look at Santa Barbara, they're a D3 team. For them to play out of conference, the closest teams for them to go play is Colorado, which is a 14-hour drive.
yep,
So realistically, to go out of conference, they have to fly. And it's a lot to ask a group of college students to fly twice a year. As a D1 program, we could barely afford it.
yeah.
It was hard to get the D3 California teams to come to Arizona, which was only a 5-hour drive.
Yeah,
That's a very good point.
I do want to put a spotlight on two other players on UT Chat, and that is Jack and Schmidt. Watching both, getting to play with you and Jack, and then also watching Schmidt score some nice goals, especially two of those goals that helped you win against Illinois State in the USRC finals. I don't know how old Schmidt is, but I know Jack is definitely a very good young player.
Yeah, so there's actually some cool story behind that. So to start, the ISU game is the first game we have won this year that I did not score in. So it was cool to see those guys step up. And Harris, he's the definition of a guy that I played ice with growing up, and I went and got him. I was like, hey, you're playing roller, like I'm starting a team. You're playing. And he was like, man, I've only had rollerblades on in the driveway. I don't know what to tell you. And so this year he's finally kind of got his wheels under him and learning how to skate. And it sounds dumb if you tell an ice hockey player, hey, you're going to have to learn how to skate again. It's a very humbling thing for them to accept. So Harris, man, he was a very good ice player, and he's only going to get better as a roller guy the more comfortable he gets on wheels. And you saw that at US Roller Cup as he stepped up huge for us and scored two big goals in that championship game. But me and him go way back in ice, and that was kind of a situation I just went to him and was like, hey, bro, we're starting a team. You're playing. I don't know what to tell you. So, and then Jack, I've got a cool story with Jack too. So I've actually played. He has 3 brothers, and I've played with 2 other brothers, and I've played with all 3 of them. I played roller with his oldest brother, and I played ice with his middle brother, and now I'm playing roller with him. So it's kind of cool to play with all 3 generations. And he's a kid that he kind of started out like I did. He played roller, and then he transferred into ice, and then he got burnt out and he went back to roller. So I think he's in kind of the same situation I was. He's one of those kids that could probably move off, and if he trained and put in the work, he could be playing D1 in a year.
Yeah.
But it takes that training, and he was like I was before I left. He had never had that coaching. And he's always played with his buddies growing up, so he's kind of always stuck back a level to play with his friends. And that's not his fault. I mean, you can't blame a kid for wanting to play with his buddies. But I think he's one that he's not afraid to take advice. So if I tell him something, he'll listen. And every time he listens, he gets better. And he has a lot of potential, and he's young. I think he'll be one of the ones that can step up and hopefully keep the program rolling, because it takes a leader in roller. You got to have somebody that's kind of not backpacking, but taking the weight of the team and kind of giving them a little shove. So I think he's for sure going to be a huge aspect in the future. And another one that I don't think gets nearly enough credit is another one of our freshmen, Brennan Wilson. He's a real gritty guy, and he's a great lockdown defenseman. He don't do anything flashy, so you don't see his name a lot, but he's another one that he cares a lot about the sport, and him and Jack stepped up a lot this year and showed interest in helping, and they don't want it to go anywhere. So
what going forward, right? You have nationals coming up. What is the vision going forward for you, for UT Chat? I mean, what's the goals here?
I think, man, this is our first time ever going. I don't think the guys really know what to expect. So I think for us, it's just going to be getting our feet wet. I think we can upset anybody. We played Tampa to 2 goals at conference championships, and we were even ahead in that game going into the third. So I think we can beat anyone. I don't think we should be counted out against any of the teams. Our goalie Hunter, he's a new goalie. He picked up hockey about 3 years ago, and he has gotten unbelievably better. I think if you told anyone he started playing hockey 3 years ago, they'd call you a liar. So
yeah, yeah. From watching you guys' games, I'm having a hard time believing that.
it's pretty cool to see him step up, and I think he takes it serious and he cares. So I would not be surprised for him to show up to nationals and play pretty big. So I think that I really want the guys to go have a good time, and I think it's hard to convince college guys to spend that kind of money. So as long as we go and have like a good time and perform well, I think all the guys will be happy and kind of buy in more for the next year. So I think our goal is down there and just to go put up a good effort. I think we could get hot and we could go on a few games and really upset some teams that people didn't expect. I think, but it's one of those things that, just like Tampa, we could go in the first game and we could choke. But I think that's the game for anybody. I don't think there's any teams in D1 that are just absolutely predicted to go in and just run people over. I actually was talking to the conference director, not our conference director, but the league director a few weeks ago, and he had called me and asked me about Tampa moving up. And I kind of given him my insight on it, and he was like, "Man, we were going to move them up, but we don't even think they're going to win D3." So that kind of tells you how competitive the league is across the board and how much opportunity there is. I think it just, like last year, Yeshiva going into it was not the favorite by any means, and they knocked Tampa out. So I think it's who gets hot at the right time, and that can be one guy. I mean. It can be one guy getting hot and putting 3 goals a game, or it can be a goalie standing on his head. So I think D3 will probably be one of the more fun divisions to watch at nationals this year.
Hell yeah.
Sounds good.
Looking forward to it.
And on top of that, I think if you watch D3 during the regular season, you see a lot of the teams have a lot of depth, and we try and play everybody during regular season. And I think when it rolls around to playoffs, teams really shorten that bench, and you get to see kind of a higher level of D3 that you don't necessarily see throughout the year.
It's a good point.
We'll see what happens, but man, dude, anybody looking to start college roller, I highly recommend it. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made. It definitely opened a ton of doors for me, and it was a super cool experience between moving to Arizona, going to Brazil, and then getting to come back and kind of play with some of my buddies again, and just remembering where it all started. So I definitely probably don't have the recommended route to go, but it seems to be an interesting one. So, but man, it's going to take more big moments in the game of roller for it to grow. So I think as long as we keep doing what we're doing, it's in the right direction. But it's definitely a start. So,
hey,
I agree.
I think that's a good place to end there. Those are some good ending words if I've ever heard them.
Yeah.
So make sure you hit the subscribe button. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. Maybe check out the weekly update on YouTube. And remember, if you're forechecking, don't let up because there's no offsides in roller hockey. I'm Dan Dean.
I'm Justin Wood.
Dylan, appreciate you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, fellas.
No offside.